Saturday, September 26th, I had a dream where I saw a huge field that was it was flat, it was open. It stayed flat for about a mile, but at the end of that mile, it elevated up to a small hill in each flat area, and a hill here, and a hill here. I saw a large number of people resembling what appeared to be armies, and on the left side, to my left, was a very, very dark and demonic army with red horses, weapons, heavily armored, obviously very ready and prepared for war that they were about to be involved with. And the other side, though, was a much smaller army, both in stature and in number. They appeared to be mesmerized by the army on the left, almost like they were unbelieving in their sense of what they were seeing. They could not believe what they were seeing. They were awed by it. They were not necessarily afraid, but they were so awed by what they saw they could not move, and they just stared. Some of these people had some armor, but it was shoddy. It was broken. There were swords that were split. There was shields that were broken. So they were this ragtag group of people who were very, very unprepared, especially if they were fighting the group that was on the left side. They seemed very, very disorganized. And most of all, they were very, very ill-prepared at what they were about to face. And suddenly, from down the hill behind the smaller army, there were 10 horses and riders. White horses. The riders had large swords, had very, very good armor, flowing capes. Even the horses were armored up. And they ride down behind this smaller army, and they come up right behind the people, the smaller army, and they begin to go around, and they begin to yell out strategies. Here's what we're going to do. We need you guys to go on this side. We need to flank them on the left. We need you to be ready and prepared. We need to be watching. The leader stated clearly that it was time to engage, and that every single one of them was needed for a fight. The leader yelled, "Charge," and they went flying across this line, but only the horsemen and his riders crossed the line. The armies began to clash swords and fight. It was very, very close hand-to-hand combat. They kept looking back to see where everybody else was from the army. They kept looking back, and they kept asking them to come and fight them. Come on, guys, come on, yeah, join us. We can push them back. We need you. Come on. Those sort of comments. And nobody showed up. Some of those in that smaller army began running back. They were walking backwards so they could keep a watch of what was coming. But the people sitting on the hill just sat down and watched. Suddenly, on the hill behind the ones who had retreated, saw a group of about 20 of the darker forces that were coming up behind them. As they got within a few feet of them, they attacked and literally beheaded 5 of them. 5 of these people who were sitting back there were beheaded before they even knew what was happening. And then they begin to stir, begin to realize they're being chased, and they start running down towards the army, even though the enemy is behind them and in front of them. So these folks were easily killed. They were basically killed where they stood. They would not engage because they had no weapons. They simply cowered down and died right there on the field. The 10 riders were still fighting, and they were successful. They were winning. And yes, there was blood, and yes, there was damage, but these guys kept fighting like they were determined. They knew they had engaged, and they were not going to back away. We're not going to stop. And what stood out to me was that only a few were pushing the enemy back for the good side, but also just a few of the evil ones took out the many because they weren't ready.